Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating relationship between recent U.S. macroeconomic data and, well, our own daily financial psychology. If you've ever wondered why the broader economy seems to be telling one grand story while your personal bank account is telling a completely different one, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to bridge the gap between those massive trillion-dollar economic shifts and the quiet, split-second decisions you and I make every single day. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the state of family wealth, move into two ways of thinking, look at the trap of financial biases, and wrap up with building better financial habits. All right, Section 1. The state of family wealth. Unprecedented surges and disparities. To really grasp our modern financial landscape, we've got to look at the hard data from the Federal Reserve, specifically their survey of consumer finances. It's basically the gold standard for tracking how American families are doing financially. Now, think back to the period between 2019 and 2022. The world effectively shut down, right? We saw massive labor market disruptions, plus unprecedented levels of fiscal support. But despite all that crazy volatility, the Fed's data reveals an overall upward trajectory in family finances. But as we start digging a little deeper, we see that this growth wasn't exactly even. Take a look at this income shift. Real median family income rose a modest 3%, while the mean income jumped a massive 15%. So what does that actually tell us? Well, the median, which is the exact middle of the pack, only saw a slight bump to about $70,300. But the mean, the overall average, skyrocketed to nearly $142,000. When your average is growing 5 times faster than your median, it means those income gains were heavily concentrated at the very top of the ladder. In fact, that 15% jump in mean income, that's one of the largest 3-year changes in the modern history of the survey. But here is the real jaw-dropper. 37%. Even after adjusting for inflation, the net worth of a typical American family, meaning all their assets minus their debts, literally leapt forward by more than a third in just 3 years, hitting $192,900. This huge surge was driven largely by skyrocketing home values and a booming stock market. But like we touched on, this wealth surge was far from uniform. If you look at families where the reference person had no high school diploma, they actually saw a 10% decline in their median income. Meanwhile, families with a college degree saw a massive 18% jump in their mean income. So we're looking at an economy that generated immense wealth, but captured it incredibly unevenly. Which kind of begs the question, beyond just a college degree, what separates the people who build wealth from those who don't? That brings us to Section 2, two ways of thinking, the psychology behind the numbers. To understand the psychology behind our money, we have to turn to Daniel Kahneman. He's the Nobel Prize-winning theorist who literally wrote the book on decision-making, called Thinking Fast and Slow. He forces us to step back and ask a really basic question. When you're faced with deciding whether to invest in the stock market or buy a house or save for retirement, what is your brain actually doing in that moment? You might think you're acting like this perfectly rational, logical calculator, but the reality is way more complicated, and honestly, a lot more human. Kahneman points out that we essentially operate with two minds, the fast, automatic System 1 and the highly analytical System 2. Now, System 1 is an evolutionary marvel. It kept our ancestors alive by making those lightning-fast, split-second decisions without burning calories. System 2 is our deep thinker. It does the math, weighs probabilities, plans for the future. But System 2 is also a massive couch potato. Deep thinking takes a ton of energy, so System 2 prefers to just sit back and let System 1 run the show whenever it can get away with it. Because System 2 is so incredibly lazy, it subconsciously pulls a little trick. It flips complex financial questions into much simpler, emotional ones. This means we frequently invest based on our feelings rather than rigorous numbers. Let's say you're looking at a company's stock. The real question you should be asking is highly complex. What are the long-term cash flow projections of this business? Your brain hates that question. It's too much work. So System 1 swaps it out for an easier one. Do I like this company's products? Suddenly, you're making a major financial decision based on a touchy-feely reaction rather than actual empirical data. Section 3. The trap of financial biases. Mental shortcuts that cost us. When we let that fast, instinctual brain loose in modern financial markets, we fall into some pretty predictable traps. Our brain essentially sacrifices intellectual rigor for speedy decisions, using mental shortcuts known as heuristics. Traps like anchoring make us fixate on past prices, while intuitive prediction makes us forecast the future based on a gut feeling. But out of all of these, there are two biases in particular that can absolutely wreck our financial portfolios. This specific bias right here, loss aversion, is arguably the most powerful. It causes us to make totally irrational choices just because we are terrified of losing what we already have. Imagine you find a crisp $100 bill on the sidewalk. Feels great, right? Now imagine losing a $100 bill out of your wallet. The psychological pain of that loss is scientifically proven to be roughly twice as intense as the joy of the gain. In investing, this dynamic absolutely paralyzes us. It makes us panic and pull our money out of a dipping market, instantly locking in our losses, rather than just waiting for the historic long-term upward trend to resume. Then we have the endowment effect. This is the one that traps us into holding on to bad investments purely because we already own them. Because it's ours, we inherently overvalue it. Let's say you bought a stock and it plummeted because the company's fundamentals are just terrible. A rational system 2 brain would say, hey, cut your losses and sell it. But your system 1 brain refuses to let go. It clings to this blind hope that it'll bounce back, purely because you feel attached to your initial decision. So how on earth do we override these hardwired evolutionary flaws? Section 4. Building better financial habits, applying James Clear's atomic habits. This brings us to the brilliant insights of James Clear. If we know we can't fully trust our moment-to-moment instincts, we fight back by building atomic habits. We basically make time our friend instead of our enemy. Changes that seem completely insignificant on a daily basis, like, say, automating a $50 transfer to an investment account every week, those compound into a massive reward over time. Remember that 37% surge in net worth we talked about at the start? The people who actually captured that wealth were the ones who already had systems in place to steadily acquire assets year in and year out. If you want better financial results, you've got to forget about setting these lofty monetary goals and focus entirely on your daily systems. Saying, I want to be a millionaire is a goal. Honestly, it's largely useless because it doesn't give you a roadmap. But saying, I automatically invest 15% of my paycheck before I ever even see it. Now that is a system. The goal is just the destination. The system is the actual vehicle that gets you there, completely bypassing your lazy system 2 brain. James Clear gives us this precise, step-by-step framework called the 4 laws of behavior change to guarantee these good financial habits actually stick. You want to save more? Make it obvious by putting your savings app right on your phone's home screen. Make it attractive by pairing your weekly financial review with your favorite cup of coffee. Make it easy by automating your investments entirely. And make it satisfying by visually tracking your net worth growing over time. To conquer that inevitable procrastination and ensure the habit is actually easy, employ the 2-minute rule. It's all about minimizing the initial friction of doing the right financial thing. Don't tell yourself you're going to spend 3 hours learning to read a complex corporate balance sheet. Tell yourself you're going to spend exactly 2 minutes logging into your brokerage account and buying one broad market index fund. Once you start, you're in motion, and physics takes over. You've officially outsmarted your fast brain. I want to leave you with this final, honestly profound thought. True financial transformation isn't just about changing your portfolio, it's about shifting your identity and becoming the person you wish to be. Every single time you choose to invest instead of making an impulse buy, you aren't just saving a few bucks. You are actively casting a vote for the identity of a financially secure, disciplined investor. The macroeconomy, it's always going to fluctuate, but your daily systems are yours to control. So as you look at your own financial habits today, I want you to ask yourself, what kind of identity are your dollars voting for right now?